This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Liv Boeree, the #1 ranked female poker player on the Global Poker Index. You've won millions playing poker and also hold a first-class degree in physics and astrophysics. When you're not playing poker, you're a model, TV presenter, heavy metal guitarist, and philanthropist. You recently spoke at Google's headquarters as the founder for Raising for Effective Giving, a fundraising organization which encourages people and companies within the poker industry to donate to charities. Liv, welcome to London Real.
Thank you.
So much to talk about. Let's talk about poker first. You know, when I see the world of poker, I don't know what to think. On one hand, I see these people really studying hard, winning lots of money. On the other hand, I see Dan Bilzerian, with popping bottles and jets and models and guns.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing your life is somewhere in between the two.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just surrounded by models and guns all the time. It's exactly what I'm all about. Perfect.
Should I check your Instagram feed?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like that sometimes, not like that?
I mean, whose life is really like that? Is his really? I mean, poker can be whatever you want it to be. You can, for the most part, most people are playing it for fun. And, they'll go down to their local casino or they'll play online. They might play a couple of hours a week. And, that's what the game's about. It's this sort of, it's this fun and pastime that people like to do. And then there's sort of, I guess on top of the pile, there are then people who play more, and they might still be winning or losing players. And then sort of the higher up the pile you go, you get the sort of the long-term winning players. And then particularly sort of these days, they tend to be more the analytical types, and so not the classic tits and guns type people.
Okay, right. Was that the classic poker player?
Well, yeah. So I mean, Bilzerian's is over there. I wouldn't necessarily call him a poker player. He's a very wealthy guy that clearly knows how to have a lot of fun and plays in some very rare, exclusive, high-stakes cash games in LA, from what I've heard of. Like, I've never seen him.
Okay.
I've never met him. I've never seen him. So it's always when people are like, oh, you're like Dan Bilzerian. I'm like, no. He just plays poker sometimes, same as, Toby Maguire sometimes plays poker.
Okay.
Would you call him a poker player? I mean, no,
right.
he's
not
an
a
actor.
Professional poker player, which you are.
I don't tend to use that word because I have other things that I do as well. There are definitely people within poker that purely make their income just from like grinding out a living playing poker. They're a very, very small percentage of all the people in the world that play poker. And I'm not one of those. I had like a time period where I was maybe for a year or so, but I've always had other things going on as well. So I'm a poker player, definitely. I'm definitely very regular on the circuit, and depending on what time period you look at it over, I'm definitely a profitable player, lifetime. And
which not everyone can say.
No.
Okay.
No, the majority of people, it depends. Like, someone can come along, they might be a bad poker player, and they'll win a big tournament, and then they'll leave, and they'll never play poker again, and they'll definitely be profitable lifetime because of that. But doesn't mean that they're, if they were to, in a vacuum, if they were to play add to infinity, then they would not be a profitable player long run. But
right.
So it's difficult to define.
Right. So if you're playing like some of the best on a regular basis and you're still profitable, it shows that you have that skill level. Okay.
Absolutely.
As opposed to that one-off win.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So poker is more of an analytics game as opposed to a Bilzerian game per se. And so the people that you compete against, I mean, is it a mathematics game these days? The way that poker's evolved and the way that it's, the Texas Hold'em game, is it really more about knowing numbers in your brain, or is it really more about playing the player and the psychology?
These days, it's, in order to become one of the very best, you have to have the desire to do a lot of analysis, both sort of pre-game, studying the theory and so on. Within the game, there's sort of, it's a game of logic essentially. Oh, well, they did this here and this there, and so that means they're likely to have this range of hands, and sort of piecing that together, and there's some sort of basic math in game. And then, again, to be really good, then after the game, you want to analyze what you've done, discuss a hand with your peers, people whose game you also respect, and sort of assimilate ideas and feedback from the decisions you've made, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a game of logic and analysis more than anything. on top of that, I mean, people often like to say, oh, so it's all about reading people and so on. It's like, well, what do you mean by reading someone? I'm looking at you now, I could be reading your body language. I see you're sort of listening to me, you're focused and so on. So that's a form of reading, but also reading someone is the way that they have played the hand. Well, they bet this many chips on that card, and then they check raised on this street, and so on and so forth. That's also a form of reading someone. You're getting information just about their betting patterns and so on. So it depends how you want to define it. But is it more about, some people tend to focus so much more on, just the way someone, well, they move their hand this way and so on and so forth. And it's just not an accurate enough picture you're going to get from the way people behave. Because yes, there are sort of human tendencies. When we're confident, we tend to expand like this, and when we're shy, we get smaller. But anyone who's half decent at poker knows this. So if they see someone's really staring at them all the time instead of actually really thinking about the game, then you can easily just go, okay, well, they're looking for my body language, so I want them to fold. So,
okay,
and so on, and then it's a combination of all of these little things. But by far, the majority, if you want to become a really good poker player, then you've got to do the theory work and the analysis.
Okay, and your degree in physics and astrophysics probably makes you comfortable with math and statistics, and so that probably came natural to you. You're like, I got this.
Yes, I mean, analysis and so on was definitely sort of my stronger point when I was still in academia. But then actually, once I had graduated, I went through a few years where, when I first started learning the game, I was just all about it and so on. But once I felt like I was proficient, I'd had some success and so on, I actually became quite lazy and complacent, for want of another word, and didn't do that level of analysis that I should have been. And the way that poker's gone is that there's so many sources of information of how to be better, like the internet and so on, that the average standard of play has just gone up and up and up. And if you don't keep up with that, then you get left behind and so on.
That's fascinating to me, because you said that in an interview, that you took kind of like a year off and you weren't studying and doing all the pieces, and then you said the game left you behind. And it's strange to me to think that poker can evolve that quickly when it's the same game, it's the same cards, the same probability, and yet the learning curve is constantly being climbed and people are learning how to play better.
Yeah, the average bad player these days is better than probably some of the best players in 1998, for example.
Okay, that's wild. And television's had a big part in that, right?
TV has, but I would say more than that, the internet.
Okay.
There's like the explosion of online poker, so sites like PokerStars and so on, they have teaching material on there. You can watch replay hands, that kind of thing, analyze it, and then there's all these poker forums and discussions where people are discussing in depth, really breaking down hands into the nitty-gritty and so on. And so you don't have to put in that much effort to really get the basics, the basic strategy, which people took years to figure out 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. I was reading the autobiography of a guy named Tony Hsieh, and he's the CEO of Zappos. He sold his company for like $1 billion to Amazon, and he's in Vegas. And he was talking about poker. He got fascinated after he sold his first company to Microsoft. And I didn't realize it, but he said, when you're playing poker, it's, you're not playing against the house or the casino where you statistically lose. You're playing against the people at the table. Right. And if you change tables and go to another table and they're just a lower standard of players, then your probability of winning goes up.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't realize that, and the casino just takes a small piece of it. So you really are playing the other people on the table, and their habits can go up and down depending on if they're tired or if they're this or that. So the game is constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Big mistake people make is pigeonholing someone from the get-go. And whenever you sit down at a table, you should obviously try to look around and make a note of all the faces and I guess calibrate. Well, first of all, you want to, I guess, apply a little bit of prejudice based upon the way people look. Oh, it's an older guy, so I'm going to assume he's perhaps a little bit more conservative in his style of play. This is a young kid with a hoodie and sunglasses who thinks he's the shit, so probably isn't. This guy, young as well, but very calm, and I really need to keep an eye on him. This girl, I don't know much about her, but she seems young and very focused, so probably should be careful of her, and so on. So you have a quick look before you've even seen how anyone's played a hand, and try and, even though in an ideal world you shouldn't put people into pigeonholes because it can be a detriment to your game, you have to make assumptions from the beginning until you've gathered enough data, and if you get evidence that actually the old guy is super aggressive, Really make a mental note of that, and don't. And people often don't keep up with this information that they're receiving, and they still stick to their initial first impression.
And you can't be playing it hours at a table.
Yeah.
And their personalities will change, or they might evolve a bit.
They can evolve. I mean, for the most part, people have a style, but then situations can happen. I don't know. They might get a phone call that's frustrated them, so now they're actually just a little bit more agitated. And before they were very emotionally calm, and now they're donking their chips around, or they win a huge pot and now they have excessive confidence, or there's a lot of things that can happen that will make people deviate from their baseline playing style. But it's more important to, again, that sort of calibration of what each person's baseline is, and make a mental note of that.
Okay, how good are you at calibrating people and players?
It's definitely one of my strong points. I mean, I couldn't put a sort of percentage number on it. Again, it depends on my state of mind that day. Right. I have days where I'm so focused, and I'll sit down and I feel like I've had, what's the movie?
Yeah, with
Limitless.
Bradley Cooper, right?
Yeah, I feel like Bradley Cooper, where I'm just noticing everything, and those are the best days. That's when you're in this sort of flow state of just heightened awareness and picking up all these little bits of information. And then other times, and I've tried to figure out why, but is it because I didn't get enough sleep, or is it because I was distracted, or I didn't meditate, and I'm sure it's a combination of those things. But there'll be times when I just cannot concentrate. However much effort I put in, I cannot bear to, the moment my cards are folded and another, the hand continues, to not be looking at my phone, not being present to what's actually going on at the table. And that's when you're then missing out on this vital information.
Okay. When you're in the flow state and you sit down, does that mean you're going to win that day? Not
at all. That's the grossest thing about poker. You can be in the absolute best mental state, playing your complete A plus game, and lose all your chips, or lose a lot of money, because there's this thing called variance, which is a fancy word for luck, and that's what anyone who plays poker is always going to be affected by. It's unavoidable over the short term. So in any given day, which is a short term, you'll be somewhere on that sort of variance bell curve. You'll either be lucky, you could be right around the middle, or you might be very unlucky. But the point is that over the long run, when you play many thousands and thousands of hands, that smooths out. And if you are making the most profitable decisions, or more profitable decisions than your opponents more often, then you're going to be, in the long run, making profit compared to those who aren't.
Okay. How important is it to cut losses? I was in the city for 15 years, Wall Street, the City of London. We'll talk later about traders and poker players, because I think they go hand in hand. But the good traders know what a stop loss is, as in they know how to walk away from a trade, not be emotional about a trade. And the bad ones are the ones that one trade can bankrupt them, because they don't know when to get out.
Right.
How much of you being successful over time is being able to just recognize when you're on the bad part of that variance curve and you've got to just fold them?
The thing you've got to think about is obviously your bankroll. So, and that's a mistake that people can make, is they either overestimate their skill level, or they underestimate the level of variance in the style of game that they're playing. And there's sort of these rules of thumb, like, never invest more than 2% or 1% or 5% of your bankroll in any given game. And those are a good idea to try and stick to. Now, there will be times when a game has popped up that is just a one-time game, and it's perhaps much higher stakes than you'd normally play, but the players are all so bad, and that you have an expected ROI of 20% instead of the usual 8% or something like that, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a shot. And that's fine, as long as you don't then, this game ends up always existing, and you're now taking a shot for 15-20% of your bankroll, because, like I said, in any given day, you could be somewhere on that bell curve of variance, and you lose it, then now your bankroll is down to here, and you're having to put bigger and bigger chunks of it in to try and recoup your losses, and that's the mistake people make. So I think the key thing is, if in doubt, be even more conservative of how big a game you can play. And a lot of players sell action to some big games. If I play a big high stakes tournament, very rarely do I have 100% of myself in it. Very, very rarely, because I know that I'm profitable in the tournament, but my bankroll because the nature of tournaments and so on, they tend to be a big win and then nothing, big win, nothing. Well, those nothings can really stretch out for a while, whether you're playing, even if you're playing really, really well. So it's important to sort of gauge, well, this is what my bankroll is, this is how profitable I am in that tournament, and you can run a fairly simple calculation to determine how much you should put up in any given game that you want to play.
Okay, what's a typical bankroll for you in a big tournament? Like, what are you walking in with as a bankroll?
Well, so the way a tournament works is everyone buys in for a fixed amount.
Okay.
So that's the entry fee, and in return for that, you will get an equal number of chips. And then the games start. Everyone's at usually tables of 9, so there might be 1,000 players. So there's 100 or so tables, and if you the minimum bet starts off really small, and then every hour or so it goes up, and let's say it doubles. And if you lose all your chips, you're out, and that's it. You're done for that tournament. And it keeps playing until someone ends up with all the chips, and they win the tournament. And
what's a typical entry fee for something like that? How big do things get?
So a main event, like a classic, for example, I play the European Poker Tour a lot. It's organised by PokerStars, and the main events for that are always 5,000 euros, or dollars, depending on where it's held. And so 5,000 euros is a typical stake for something like that. But then there are plenty of tournaments that are sort of £100, £1,000, £100,000 tournaments. I've never played anything that big. They had a $1 million buy-in tournament in Vegas last year.
Okay.
I didn't play it. My boyfriend did, which was terrifying.
So you guys bankroll part of that, someone else bankrolled him as well?
Right. He had a piece, and a lot of the sort of pro players that were playing in that had sold off a lot of themselves.
How much will they sell off? Like 50% or 80%?
It depends. Sometimes more people sometimes play for only 5 to 10% of themselves.
Okay.
I can't imagine anyone in that tournament, except for the odd mega rich businessmen that have come in to play it. Most poker players in that probably had a maximum of 50% of themselves.
Do you want to play in something like that one day?
I mean, if I got the opportunity, if someone came along and like, I'll take 80% of your action, and then I just have to sell a bit more, absolutely, of course, because provided I feel that I'm at least slightly profitable. I mean, my edge might be very, very small, but it's hard to justify playing in a tournament if I know that I'm going to be sat at the table of the 9 very best in the world. Someone's got to be the losing player there. The chances are it's going to be me. I don't want to be too delusional about how good I am. I think I know I'm good in most fields, but in those super high roller tournaments where you get some of the very best people, if you get unlucky with your table draw, that you just have them all at your table, well, then it's going to be a miserable day.
Right. Where are the rest of the women at the poker table?
It's a great question. It's a really, really good question. There's been a lot of debate about it recently. Things are getting a lot better. I mean, even when I started out 10 years ago, there's so many more girls you see, women, ladies, whatever you want to call them, around, but we're still very underrepresented.
5% of the players? Less?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on generally the sort of the lower stakes the tournament, the higher the percentage, the better the ratio is. Some of these high rollers, like a 25k buy-in, there'll usually be 1, maybe 2 females, if that, out of 100, which is actually one of the better ratios, but sometimes it's 0. Typically it's around 5 to 7% on a good day.
And why is that?
Well, a lot of people like to go, well, it's because the female brain's not cut out for poker, which drives me absolutely mad. It's almost certainly, you can't be certain about any of these things because there's just too many variables to ever run an extensive study to go conclusively, it's because of this. But I think it's most likely a combination of historical factors, societal factors. You could argue, evolution itself encouraged men to be more competitive and females to be more nurturing. Well, poker is a highly competitive game, and
it's based on intimidation and based on
right. And again, it's not because the female brain can't handle it per se. I think it's because females have been trained they don't need to do it. And so they've just, again, sort of, whether you want to say it's sort of in the caveman society, it was discouraged, so you could blame it as a societal thing, or whether it was a purely natural phenomenon, I don't know. But for the most part, it's because poker became popular in a time when it was played in smoky back rooms. It was sort of the boys' night out, these men's clubs, where women were just not really welcomed. Certainly not at the table.
What was it like when you started? Did you get a lot of looks and comments? Do you still get them?
Yeah, it was really not that bad, actually. I remember the first time I went and played, I was 21, and I learned to play on this TV show that took 5 beginners and taught us how to play, and I loved it absolutely. I was a disaster on the TV show. I cried, didn't really know what was going on, but that aside, I loved the game, and so I went to my local card club here in London, and they'd advertised they were having a £5 rebuy tournament. Well, I didn't know what a rebuy was, so I came down with £10 in my pocket, and I remember walking in, and there was, except for 2 or 3 waitresses, 125 guys. And at the time I was 21, I had hair down to here that was bright red, I think, maybe with blonde, who knows, badly dyed, self-dyed. And I wore like heavy metal gear all the time, like biker jacket, leather trousers and so on. And this was just my normal outfit, because why not? And I remember everybody turning and staring like, who is this chick? And I sat down, and everyone was really nice. And it fit with my personality type, perhaps at the time. You know, I got a lot of attention and I loved it. But that said, I can completely understand for someone to walk in who's a beginner at a game and to have that sort of that level of focus on them. People do look, well, they will, but at least back then, would point a lot of attention at a woman. And that already, when you're already a complete beginner and it's scary sitting down playing this intimidating game, to then have everyone staring at you on top of it because you have boobs, I mean, it's stressful. But I
got a funny feeling you've used that to your advantage on the poker table.
Yes, I mean, define. Have I sort of deliberately moved my top down? No, I don't have enough to I think distract people that much.
But I mean, men aren't used necessarily to you at the table. They're used to a lot of other people looking like them. And when you're there, they might not know how to read you or how to be read. You would be a monkey in the wrench. You would probably
which can be a big benefit. Exactly. Right. Generally speaking, men will react to women in one of 3 ways. They'll be completely impartial to them, in which case it means they're a good poker player. They're looking out. They might have a slight prejudice, like I mentioned. Oh, well, let's say she's going to be a little bit more on the scared side, but I'm going to wait and see how she plays, and then I'll determine it. Or 2, they are fortunately very, very rare now, barely ever see it, outwardly misogynist, don't think that she really either belongs there, or they want to mollycoddle her, be like, oh, here, dear, and be a little patronizing in that way. And then they either tend to be overly aggressive in terms of their style of play, or they'll be excessively nice. So that's important to figure out quickly which one they are, but they're definitely not playing optimally. Or thirdly, they actually might be attracted to the woman and be flirting with her. And again, that's usually when they fall into the playing a little bit softly against them.
Okay.
And then 4, they're actually ones that go, oh, she's a girl playing this and she's wearing a Team Pro patch and so on. She must be good. I'm scared of her. But again, those are sort of more on the less frequent side. To be honest, these days it's player type 1 is what you see. Most people don't give a shit that you're female, which is great.
Okay, focused on their game.
Yeah.
You mentioned the kid at the table with the sunglasses and the hoodie. What's with the sunglasses? Do you wear sunglasses? And have people going away from the sunglasses? 'Cause I remember tuning into TV like 5 years ago, and it was like a pool in Miami. Everybody was wearing them. What's the deal with that?
I think fashion comes and goes, and so that was the thing that started off. They saw Phil Ivey or Negreanu or whoever, the sort of the forerunners of the game wearing them, so they felt like that was the thing to do. This was also a time when people overvalued body language.
Right.
Well.
Yeah, which you don't now, because you're saying it's a complete package. You got to watch the behavior, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, and that I'll go to that a little bit later, but people think that, a lot is given away by the eyes, when actually it's not true at all. The eyes are one of the least informative. The eyes and the face are one of the least informative things. Remind me to explain why.
Okay.
But yeah, I think people felt they wanted to they should hide their eyes because they're giving something away. It gives this sort of sense of security. And it does, actually, when you have them on at the table, you do feel this level of security. It's also really annoying because it's hard to see the cards. Often it's not that bright in there. And there's nothing worse than reading a club for a spade by mistake and thinking you have a flush or don't have a flush when you do or whatever.
Does that happen to you?
Oh, yeah. So no, I haven't worn sunglasses for a long time. Another reason is, I like to look someone in the eye. I think it intimidates them more often than they're getting information from me. And also these days, if I sit down at a table and I see someone wearing sunglasses, I assume that they're the fish. I assume that they're feeling that they're not completely confident in themselves and they're wanting to hide something.
Okay.
Or they're wanting to look cool.
So on the professional circuit these days, is it very few will wear the sunglasses now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, talk about you like intimidating people by looking them in the eyes. You're looking me in the eyes right now. Talk to me about bluffing. You know, you have a famous clip on YouTube, the Golden Balls clip.
Oh, God.
What's that, from '07 or something? But you bluff that poor young man.
That poor guy.
And you sell him down the river.
Yeah.
And you did a great job. And I guess I knew it was coming because I watched the clip. But was that like one of your first bluffs on camera? And what's going on there? And were you always good at lying?
So that show, this was when I was on the game show circuit, which there is such a thing.
I didn't know.
And the way that show worked, just for the viewers who haven't seen it, it started off with 4 people. You'd all be given balls, and inside each ball was a money amount, and your front balls were opened up so all your competitors could see them, and then your back 3 you could look at, or back 2, and so you would have, it's like kind of like poker.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You have your private information and your public information, and then the game would start, and you'd have to tell people what you had in your back balls, and you can be truthful or not if you have bad money amounts. And the goal is to accumulate. You have to vote someone off, and you want to ideally vote off the person with the worst amount of money. So now you're down to 3 people, and same deal, you ideally want to take up through the most amount of money. But the catch is, when you get to the final 2 players, you're given this option to split or steal, which you both have to pick simultaneously. And it's a classic form of the prisoner's dilemma. If you both go for split, then you both take 50-50 of the prize pool. If you both go for steal, you both go home with nothing. And if one goes for split and one goes for steal, the stealer wins 100%. And the splitter goes home with nothing. So it's the only way to win is to convince your opponent to go for split.
Right. Then
what you do is up to you. But it's the perfect example of game theory, like game theory 101, which is if you look at the maths of the situation, if you go for split every time, you'll win 50% or 0, depending on what your opponent does. Or if you go for steal every time, you'll win 100% or 0. So it's twice as profitable to always go for steal yourself. And your job is to try and convince your opponent. So I just played the game correctly.
You did.
I get down to the final 2, and
did you knew you had him? Were you like, this guy's a sucker, or you think he might have been gaming you too?
Well, no. The reason why I did know that I was very confident. You never know for certain, but I was very confident that I had him was because when we got down to the final 3, there was this young lady, and she had much better money amounts than him, and I was pretty confident that he was lying about one of the amounts, just the way he said it. He had just bad. He'd gotten unlucky and he had bad balls, and but the thing is about this young lady, she knew how to play the game clearly, and if you understand how to play the game, you can never go for split if you want to be profitable. So she can bring through £1 million. If she's only going to go for split 1% of the time, well, she's only actually really worth in equity £10,000. Whereas this guy, he was lying. Felt like he was going to get voted off anyway because of it. So he was absolutely desperate. So I actually felt that because if the 2 of us went through, we could win up to about 40,000, depending on how this weird luck thing they do afterwards. So he was worth more in equity to me. So I was like, look, and they never once thought about voting me off, which was handy. I said, look, I think you're lying. If you tell me the truth, what you really have, then I will trust you, because this game is all about trust. I'll take you through, and we'll split the money. He's like, I'm so sorry, you're right. I don't have much, but I promise 100% I'm going to split it with you. Please just vote me through. Girl goes crazy, understandably, and the 2 of us go through. So that's why I was fairly confident.
Okay, so you conspired early on. You started leading him down the garden path early, and then you knew what he was going to do.
Yes.
Okay. And did you feel bad in that instant?
I felt awful.
Okay, but not that bad. It's just business.
It's such a mixed bag because the game theory, I went on the show. My goal was to win as much money as possible because that's the objective of the show. They had said, whatever you do, you'll never see the person afterwards. So it's not like you could offer a deal mid-game either. They've said you can say you're going to split it with them, but you will not see this person afterwards. So unless you pick the split ball, you won't. And he, I can't remember what I was going to say now.
You didn't feel bad afterwards. You didn't.
I cried afterwards actually.
Okay.
Jasper Carrot was afterwards. He's like, "Well done." I was like, "I feel horrible." The audience was booing. His family were there, and yeah, it's a little different to poker where you bluff someone and it's a very zero-sum game without a collaborative option.
Right.
And people expect to get bluffed and so on. Whereas even on this show, people should expect to get bluffed is really no different. Because there's a less profitable, but there is a collaborative option of both going for split, then it's easier to make someone into the bad guy when they play the game optimally.
Okay. When you play poker, what's your competitive advantage? Is it reading people? Is it also engaging with people, intimidating them? Like, what would you say objectively is what you're good at?
My biggest advantage is my experience, in all honesty, because I've just played so many hands now, lifetime. And I've done so much analysis and study. I've surrounded myself by the very best minds in the game, and that's rubbed off on me. And so really, that's my strongest advantage is just my understanding the theory of the game more than people. But then on top of that, again, I've seen situations so many times that I'll know. It's become almost intuitive to know when someone's bluffing and when they're not.
Okay. 2010, you won big 1.2 million euro pot. Did that change your life and kind of put you on this course of I'm going to do this poker thing for a while? And what was that like for you?
I was already pretty devoted to wanting to become really well known in poker at that point. I'd been traveling the circuit for about a year, and but I never expected to win such a big one so soon. So very, very lucky girl.
And PokerStars is one of your sponsors. So is it a good to have a sponsor like that? Can you kind of earn a living wage as like them as a sponsor?
Absolutely. I mean, it definitely sees you through times when you're on the downswings in poker, which will come and go. And I mean, that's kept me afloat in times when I was A, playing badly, and B, running horribly. That's what you say when you're getting unlucky consistently.
Okay, because otherwise you're bankrolling yourself.
Absolutely.
And it's really your savings account that allows you to go up and down. And
yeah, exactly. And I had a couple of years where I didn't really have any major wins at all. And so had I not had that to keep me afloat, I would have really struggled. So
do you ever worry about going totally bust? Do you see people on the circuit that go bust and you never see them again? You hear bad stories?
Yeah, a lot of people, a combination of, again, being on this big downswing, that they're on that lower end of the variance spectrum, and secondly, they just mismanage their money. A lot of players will win this big amount and still, even though they academically understand bankroll management, they just don't stick to it, or they still underestimate variance, or they are going to the club and stuffing $100 bills into strippers, who knows.
You spent time in Vegas, obviously.
Yeah. you see this stuff.
But you're pretty conservative like that. You don't.
I don't stuff bills into strippers. That often, no.
Right. And you don't buy Ferraris and things like that.
No. I've always been. I mean, my friends laugh at me how we call it nitty. I am with regards to big purchases. The only thing I bought after my win was my apartment, and I mean that was because it seemed like a good investment and I needed somewhere to live. Otherwise, I kept my old shitty Seat Leon until it went mouldy, and now I don't have a car at all. I hate designer clothes, in all honesty. I like things to look nice, but I'm not into flashing the cash at all.
What is it like a day in the life of a professional poker player? If you had to explain someone like a week of your life, like when you're in the season, what is it that they wouldn't expect in both the good way and the bad way?
I guess the thing to do is describe what it's like when you're at a tour stop. So you'll get to, I'm going to Prague, for example, in 3 days' time, and I'll be there for 10 days. Sometimes you'll stay in a hotel, other times we might do Airbnb. That's actually become more popular now with a lot of poker players.
Get away from the casino, get away from everybody.
Exactly. You have your own space, you have your own kitchen, and that's really, really nice. And depending on what time the tournaments start, you'll typically get up Ideally, I'll try to get up 2 hours before I play. In reality, I tend to get up about half an hour. But yeah, it's a lot of people treat it like their day job because they know they're going to be playing for up to 5-6 days in a row. And so you'll get up around 10, have some breakfast, go to the gym. Then you're playing until the day's done, which is usually around 10 or 11 p.m. And then you might go for a few drinks, bed, and repeat. Other times, it depends also on the location. Like there's an event in the Bahamas, which I'll be going to, the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure, and if you'll deliberately take days off because there's so much fun stuff to do. You can go scuba diving and so on. So it's really hard to say that there's a typical thing. I often like to combine, if I'm going to somewhere, particularly I've not been before, I'll give myself 3 or 4 days on either side to actually go and experience the city, because if you're traveling all this way, then you might as well actually visit and see what this place is. And I think that's a mistake a lot of poker players make. They'll go to somewhere and they'll just be in the casino 24/7. If they're not playing a tournament, they're playing a cash game, and then they'll be drunk in a bar or some club, which, let's face it, clubs are all the same wherever you are in the world these days. And they won't actually experience any of the sort of culture of whatever location they're in. And I mean, that's what I loved so much about poker, is this opportunity to see the world and travel and have a reasonably good excuse to do it.
Do you ever have a moment when it's like 2 a.m. and you're in some dodgy casino in Prague, surrounded by a table of men who want to kill you, and you're like, what am I doing?
I've had times when I was really questioning why I'm there, because I've gone to an event where I was not that sure about going, but I didn't really want to pass up the equity, and I know I'm plus EV in it, but actually I really would like to stay home because I've been really interested in doing some comedy writing or whatever I'm into at the time. And no, but I've got to go because it's there, and I've been to this stop 5 times before, and now I'm here, and I bust out the main event, and I guess there's this 1K event starting now. I'll jump in that, and then I'm sat there, and I'm in this the exact opposite of the flow state, where the hand's over and I'm browsing my Twitter. I'm not even reading anything constructive, but so I'm not present anywhere. Basically, I'm not present on my phone. I'm not present in the game, and very unlikely do I actually end up winning that tournament. There is definitely a correlation between my intention, obviously, and my success, but there are obviously times where I could just still get lucky and win, and then rationalize, actually that's the way to do it. Maybe I shouldn't be mentally present. I've had moments where I've maybe played multiple tournaments over a few day stretch, but I wasn't present at all. And before each tournament, I wasn't excited to play, and I'm just doing it because I feel like I should. And those are definitely like the WTF moments where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'd be better to stay home and read some interesting book, or not even just watch 10 movies in a row. I would have saved money. I wouldn't be down all this money, or I might have lost, if you want to look at it in expected value terms, I would have lost a little bit of potential ROI, and instead I would have learned something new, or I would have relaxed, or whatever it was. So those times can come out, and I mean we call it burnout, basically.
Okay.
And
common.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonreelacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Reel, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonreelacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.
For me, like this year, for example, I've probably played